Hey everybody, I'm Nicole Schwartz. I'm the product manager for the Secure Composition Analysis team at GitLab, also known as I write security tools for security people to use. I'm an Agile advocate and I've been a hacker since at least high school. So we're going to be talking about software lifecycle. Why do devs do what the fuck they do? And what does shift left mean? And why does this apply to me? Where security actually fits into the whole DevSecOps thing, and how do you actually get people training so that they're not just running off and doing things randomly that you don't know what they are. So, software development is hard. Your job is hard, but their job is also hard. And it's gotten a lot harder. We've started introducing portability, like containers. And we've said, okay, well, now you need to understand microservices and zero trust, because you're about to deploy into places where you don't know what else is there. And you can't just trust everything that is a part of your network anymore. And also you need to go faster, because we need to do deploys every single week, and I need a new feature. Oh, and by the way, you have to do your own unit tests and regression tests. And security. We think we want you to do some security testing too. None of this got taught to developers in school, so they just suddenly had all this put on their plates. I mean, none of this is a bad thing. It just means writing modern software is pretty complex. Now, in a lot of cases, they're going to be using Agile and DevOps together. DevOps is a practice. How are we doing the thing? And Agile is a process. We're going to do it following these principles. Both of them focus on how do we avoid tossing work over the wall. So if I'm the developer, I used to be like, write my code. Hey, testing. There you go. Come back to me in a month. I'll take care of it. And then a month later, you get the bugs. And then you're like, ah, shit, what was I doing when that bug happened? Oh. So we're trying to reduce that by having, in both Agile and DevOps, your team actually understand a little bit about testing for quality, for performance, for following spec, and also doing a little bit of security testing. What is a cross-site script? Well, there's this open source tool, and if I run it, it'll tell me I have one. How do I fix it? So though Agile and DevOps are not the same, they're very complementary, and they've both grown in popularity in recent years. Speaking of growing in popularity, they're trendy! Trendy isn't necessarily bad, but it certainly means a lot of people are going to read some Medium articles, and they are now the new expert on DevSecOps, and we're going to implement it, and we're not going to do any training. And I'm sure you know exactly how well that goes, and you might be inflicted with some of that within your corporation. So if everyone says we're going to do Agile, or we're going to do DevOps or DevSecOps, what you need to do is make sure, hey, can we all get training so we're all on the same page? Can we all at least understand the terms that we're using and what we're aiming for so that we have shared objectives? And by the way, security is now a success metric. So can we make sure that with all the planning, security is involved so I can ask for what I want? Because if I'm a success metric, I, as the security team, would really love to get a say in what that metric is. And by the way, remember, everything focuses on really small, fast features. So you want to come in and actually have a list of ideas that can be implemented in small releases so they don't just go, oh, that's really big. Well, how about we do this instead? We read about this. Have some small ideas for them to start with to get them to realize that you're playing on the same team. Also, shift left. Everything's going to the left now. Left of what? Well, software development lifecycle has a couple steps. You have requirements, design, code, test, deployment, maintenance. Maintenance is important. Lots of people forget it for some reason. What you're trying to do is consider each one of the steps and how you test for those steps much earlier in the process. During requirements, can you actually plan for some security items and some testing items? When you're designing, can you reuse architecture that the security team has already signed off on? Do you make it easy for your architects in the company to see what security designs have already been signed off for similar projects that they could just reuse instead of having to continually reinvent the wheel or keep having to get approved similar but only slightly different architectures? So if you want to get considered earlier, you have to make your life a little bit easier for the product managers and the architects. By the way, we're not actually getting rid of security testers or quality testers. You're just trying to automate some of the low-hanging fruit. So this isn't about like, oh, taking away people's jobs. It's about writing better quality stuff. Which brings me to test everything. So the benefits. Vulnerabilities get found earlier. And remember that whole, toss it over the wall, it comes back in a month, and what the hell was I doing? Have you ever had to work on 2 projects at a time? Maybe 2, incidents or 2 assessments? It's kind of annoying to jump back and forth, oh, what was I doing over here? And, oh, what was I thinking when I wrote that note? I thought that note was going to be really useful to me later, and I kind of forget the context. Building that context and being able to do that is really important. And developers, when they get something from a month ago, it's when I did that form, what was I smoking? Yeah, I don't remember. So what was that bug? Crap. Well, maybe I'll just rewrite it again and introduce a new bug. So if we're finding it really fast, then I will hopefully still be in the same context and be able to fix it, or at least tell you what I was thinking, and maybe security can tell me how to do it a little bit better. So developers are now on board for automating some of these security tests. And that means that you can be hey, how about a SAST scan? A majority of our bugs seem to be simple cross-site scripting stuff. That'll catch it. Or, hey, a lot of our stuff is dependency-based problems. We're using a lot of third-party libraries that are really out of date. Can we just do a dependency scan every time you add something, and it'll tell you that there's a known vulnerability there, or it's kind of really behind, so that before you use the library extensively all over the place, you can just try and grab the new one and see if that works, instead of having to backport later. And forking. Don't let them fork. Bad idea. All right, so security as code. You've probably heard this. What do you mean security as code? Well, think about it. Everything in the cloud now is write this config file and poof, it deploys itself into a whole new environment. And a lot of those environments, GCP and AWS, have security settings. So that means that I'm writing a bunch of security settings, whether I realize it or not, as part of my deployment. And that's code to me. I'm checking it into the repo. And, Chef, Puppet, whatever else is pushing it out there. So as a security person, you should know where these config files are going, who's writing them, and if they actually have bothered to read or understand any of the security settings in your cloud provider. And maybe give them some advice, hey, I made this default config file, and here's my recommended settings. If you want to deviate from there, can we have a conversation about it? I'd love to have a library of pre-approved ones that you can use. So if they're responsible for doing all of these deployments themselves, you can help them by being look, I made a whole library of these for you. You don't have to think about it. Just pick one of these, because I labeled this one web app and I labeled this one mobile app, and it should make your life easy. And they're not going to then just leave the password off the S3 bucket or something. Speaking of, we've got a lot of different people that are accountable for different areas of security. You've now got your own internal teams and your cloud provider. And, this adds complexity. You need to figure out, make a list. What have I got? Who's responsible for it? And then how do I verify? They may say they're doing something, but are they telling you the truth? Can you occasionally check up on that? Make sure they're not just bullshitting you and being yeah, we did that thing. Now, third-party providers, internal teams, everyone. Can you occasionally make sure they're actually doing what they said? Also, you need to scale. Because remember, we're going really fast now, and you probably have spun up a bunch of tiny little dev teams, and they're going a million different directions. You personally don't scale, or if you do, please let me know how. I'd love a couple clones. So you need to target the automation where it matters, and get each one of those teams. Where is the biggest risk for that team? Well, they're writing a web app, and it doesn't collect any money, and it doesn't store any PII, so whatever, you can do a basic web scan. Y'all have PII. Let's talk about that. Or, you're the internal HR server. Can we keep you off the network? Or can we, make sure it's really restricted with who has access, and can we make sure we do, much more testing on that? So, remember, security is now one of the requirements. DevSecOps Get that planned into the projects. Go to product and be well, since we're one of the KPIs now, can we make sure that we've got a couple of weeks set aside to do the automation at the beginning or the middle? Do not let them wait till the end. Because if you matter, you're in the beginning or the middle. All right, so you are secure and you're in the middle. Okay, how exactly do we get here? Well, the business basically just told you that they care about you and they're on board. And so now you just need to get the engineers to know what the heck that means. Remember, they didn't get trained on this in school. And security is now everyone's job. The call center needs to not get social engineered. The developers need to put in back doors. And, maybe you need to make sure that people wandering around the building close the door behind them and don't let people into the server room. There's a good point made at RSA, surprise, surprise, who would have thought that security must become everyone's responsibility, and it has to be a normal part of everyone's process. Again, security is everyone's job. Perfect is the enemy of good enough. You're never going to get perfect with any of your departments or internally. So what can be good enough? What can make them better than they are today? Make everyone include security in their processes. Now we're going to get kind of back to where exactly the security gates should be, if you want to call it that. If you look over there, we've got the developer. They're working on their little MRs. When we talk to developers, I'm at GitLab, remember, they actually want to write quality code. They want to be proud of the code that they write. And if they can, in their MR, actually see, I had some security bugs, let me fix them. I had some quality bugs, let me fix them. Or, hey, I didn't have any bugs, and I know because this was on just my MR, any of those things that come back are not one of my teammates who introduced that, it's me. And so I'm responsible for that. And if I can't fix it, I can escalate to maybe a person on my team who's a little more knowledgeable, or the security department. And having them be able to iterate and clear all those errors means there's less for you to review in your security tools by the time it gets later into the environment. So help them to be proud of their work, because let's circle back. Your business is in business to get money out of people. The people want to buy the product. The developers want to make the product that everyone's proud to buy. It doesn't crash, it's usable. And you want to make sure that it doesn't end up in the news so everyone doesn't go, oh, was that the company that got breached? I'm not sure I want to give them my data. So you all are on the same side. Have a product people like, are not afraid of, and fork over money, and you all get paychecks. So, reminder, I work at GitLab. Just saying that because you're about to hear a whole bunch of stuff about me. So, when you've got all of these tools, maybe you have Jira, maybe you have Bitbucket, maybe you've got GitHub, you could have Trello, Microsoft TFS, all sorts of things. Every single tool that you have, there's probably an opportunity to integrate in a third-party point security system. So there's a ton of silver bullets out there, but they each probably serve one particular area. So can you get some static scans into whatever your code repo is? Can you get some dynamic scans into your testing environment or your deployment area? Can you make sure before you're deploying, you've got container checks going? In create stage, can you check your dependencies? If you have a lot of legal compliance issues, can you check for license compliance? Are we using licenses that we're permitted to use as the type of entity that we are? That's probably going to be over in create and verify. So get items worked in throughout your process. There are plenty of open source tools. And if you go ahead on Twitter, I'm going to post these later, and you can integrate in open source third-party tools if you want to be able to see them, or if you don't have a lot of budget yet, you just need to prove that they work before you can move to a paid solution. There's also things out there like WhiteSource and Black Duck that'll also do similar items. But you can also be lazy. GitLab has it all baked in already. So you can turn on SaaS, DAS, secret detection, dependency scans, container scans, and license compliance without having to do any of that integration, without having to worry about the fact that you're managing how many different logins for how many different people and what that security stuff is. But the important part is, where can you fit it in every single one of your tool sets and put in those checks? Remember, verify and reduce risk. What is the boring stuff that you can just make go away and check on reports? All right, training. So everyone's excited. They're going to start doing SAS scans. They're going to get something, and it's going to say, that's a SQL injection. And they're going to be like, what's a SQL injection? Well, you probably torture them with OWASP training once a year because you have to anyway, right? So there's a budget for training somewhere. And DevSecOps, hey, look, this is now a priority for the engineering team. Hey, engineering team, you need to set aside a budget to do some training. Check out VDA Labs, Hunter 2, Code Bashing. There's a lot of online or in-person training that you can have your developers take that is code specific. Because if you give them some general class, they're going to be like, I don't really know how this applies to me. But if you're writing in Python, give them Python training. If they're writing in C#, give them C# training. Make it relevant so they actually know what's going on. All right, you've told them a little bit about here is how you write secure code. Here's some security principles. Well, why don't you also think like an attacker? I mean, a lot of times when you're learning something, doesn't it stick better when you know, like, okay, why do I lock the front door? Well, because if I don't, my sister's going to open my door, come in and take my shit, right? Well, if I'm a developer, why do I care if this thing's here? Well, because somebody's going to put in, a little symbol here and a little symbol here, and then all the stuff comes out. Well, okay, how did they do that? Can we teach them some Burp Suite, some NetSparker? Can we run them through some other kind of stuff so that they're actually able to be like, ha, now I know why that matters, and you actually made me fix it. The trick is, for everyone other than basic training, to go to maybe more advanced training, you're going to want to get volunteers. Because the people who don't volunteer are going to put it at the bottom of their list, and are going to be like, I don't really care about this. But even if they do volunteer, you've got to make it a little fun. Can you have some kind of board in the office for here's the people who have fixed the most number of bugs in our software that were security related? Or here's the people who actually found vulnerabilities in some of our older projects, and fixed those, and we didn't even scan those. Can you give them stickers? What about coffee? Donuts? Pizza? It's got to be something. Figure out what everybody likes and give it to them. Or is there a local B-Sides? Can you send them to a local B-Sides conference to actually attend talks, play in a CTF? Maybe if you have a good enough training program, they can even give a talk. Which gets into the self-paced learning. So what about having a CTF team at work? Could you get one day each month where everyone does a CTF together? Could you have some lunch and learns where you and they talk about things that you learned in a CTF, the latest breach, maybe some cool new tool that came out? Or you just went to a conference, how many good YouTube videos are there? Can you have some repo that you're sharing all the good YouTube videos with one another? So that as a new person comes in, they have the experience of going through and seeing oh, I'm kind of interested in, this particular area. Oh, hey, you already have 10 suggested videos for me. This is perfect. All right. So hopefully I've got everybody on board here where you now have the stick where I matter. You can't just put me in the backlog. And that means that you have to remind everyone politely, we're on the same team. We want people to give us money and buy our product. They want to trust our product. And to trust our product, that means it needs to work when we say it's going to work, and it needs to not give away all of their information. And a bad product or breach could cost us a lot of money or our jobs. If we're a small enough company, it could completely put us out of business. So let's set this time aside for some automation, for some training, and maybe even for growing security advocates. These security advocates can eventually become security team members. Or even if they don't do that, they can at least be an escalation point, and they can save you time from having to answer all of the same questions because they're embedded within the team. They'll also maybe notice some things and be your eyes and ears. And if they notice it and bring it up to you, you might think this project that was innocuous and really shouldn't be high risk. Oh shit, you're connecting to what? So use security advocates, and also trust but verify. Your third party, one of your development teams says they're doing something. Are they really? Just occasionally check in randomly. And finally, get it baked in as early as possible when you're doing the design phase even. Can you make security part of the original design instead of tacked on afterwards? And when you can you have it when they're literally doing their merge requests? Don't wait until all the code's ready and going to production. When they do that MR, can you immediately do the scan? Reminder, we've got that baked in. And then make sure product and engineering are setting that time aside. Not just, oh yeah, we put you in there, you're coming up. Okay, how many sprints are in this quarter? Which sprint are we going to be in? Or if you're doing daily releases, can we pick a certain day by the 15th of each month? Can we have, at least one automation task in by the first part of the month and one in by the last part of the month? And next, encourage people, grow them. You don't know who your next security team member is going to be. And just think, how many times is it when somebody on the security team is like, I really wish I understood this language a little bit better so we could dig into this? Wouldn't it be nice if you had someone who used to be a developer and had a ton of languages? Or wouldn't it be nice if you just had a bunch of really excited developers who are doing a lot of your first level triaging of vulnerabilities for you instead of you having to triage all of them? So get them on your side, get them excited, give them some donuts, whatever it takes. So finally, feedback. If you would like to click a QR code, go for it. Otherwise, there is a Google form link. And again, this will be up on my Twitter. So I think I might have time for a question or two. Yes.
How are you putting dynamic analysis in the pipeline? What does that look like? How do you take that bite-sized change to actually run in dynamic analysis?
So what we're doing is we have something. Oh, so the question is, how are we getting dynamic analysis in when people do the MR? So every time an MR is built, the pipeline builds a review app, which think of it as like an instantly built QA environment. And then the verify stage runs all of the quality tests and dynamic tests and coming soon fuzzing tests against that area. And whenever it finds something, if it's related to, or if it is a new find as opposed to an old find, it will associate it to that MR.
How big is that scope, though?
So it runs it against everything, but it dismisses or it doesn't show you anything that was already found before. So it's kind of just, there is a library and you keep stacking things into the library and it's like, oh, I'm just not going to show you those right now. So, yeah.
So just to follow on that, so do you compare that to the current sort of like master branch and then like any sort of feature branches merging in, it's a delta?
So the question is, how do we find that difference? And yes, it's delta. So. Alrighty. Again?
How long does that take?
How long does that take was the question. Really depends on how big your code base is. So you can say don't block on the results of this, so let it complete, and then we'll get the feedback quickly, but we won't block the build. So. All right. Awesome. Hopefully everyone can now get security built into your DevOps toolchain. Thanks.